I'm Ann Dark.
I'm Tracy Stormy.
And I'm Kathy Knight.
And together we are
It Was a Dark and Stormy Book Club,
a podcast for mystery lovers.
Welcome.
Welcome back to our second special episode of In Agatha's Footsteps. We are very excited to announce Victoria Thompson, who writes the Gaslight Mystery Series.
Edgar and Agatha nominated author Victoria Thompson writes the Gaslight Mystery Series set in turn-of-the-century New York City and featuring midwife Sarah Brandt. Her latest, Murder on Union Square, is a May 2018 release. City of Lies is the first book in her new Counterfeit Lady series, a November 2017 release from Berkeley. The second book in the series, City of Secrets, will be out in November of this year. She also contributed to the award-winning writing textbook, Many Genres / One Craft. Victoria teaches in the Seton Hill University Master's Program in Writing Popular Fiction. She lives in Illinois with her husband and a very spoiled little dog.
So without further ado, we are pleased to present our interview with Victoria Thompson.
We would like to introduce and welcome Victoria Thompson, who is the award-winning author of the Gaslight Mystery Series, starring Sarah Brandt and Frank Malloy and their adventures. And I've read every one, and I just love this series. I've loved it since I picked up the first one.
And this part of our podcast will let you know this, Vicki, that we have started a new segment. We mostly focus on authors who are not yet household names, but we've started a new segment where we call it In Agatha's Footsteps. And you are our second recipient of that. This is where we will ask an established author some advice for authors who are just getting started.
That sounds great.
Our first question is, what did you have to do to research the time period? We know you're not old enough to have been there.
I feel like I am. A lot of people say, I couldn't write a historical because I wouldn't enjoy the research. That to me is the fun part, is the research. And when I first started, I was poor and I couldn't afford to buy books. So I would go to the library and spend a lot of time at the library checking out books and finding books. And since I've become more successful now, I buy them, and I have a huge reference library here now of books. And luckily my time period is recent enough that there are a lot of photographs of that time period. And looking at a photograph is like so much easier than you can read pages and pages of text and not get as much detail as if you look at one photograph and you can see what people are wearing, what kind of furniture's in the room, what the decor looks like, what the city street look like, who's walking and what they're wearing and all that kind of stuff. It's really, really makes it a lot easier to see a photograph. So I'm very fortunate there that I have photographs to look at, but I have just a lot of books. And the way I research, and in fact, I'm doing that this week as we speak, is I'll sit down, and with it being a series, both of my series are series, and so I know pretty much the time period that the next book's going to be set. So I just sit down and start reading what was going on in the world at that, and especially in New York City during that time period. And when I get to something that makes me say, "Oh, I didn't know that," then I know that's what's going in the book. So I'm doing right now, looking for that aha moment.
Yes. Well, I like the way you add in real characters from history into the story, like Mr. and Mrs. Brandt will have Theodore Roosevelt come for a visit, or one of the rich, wealthy billionaires that were around at that time. So,
yeah, that's fun to be able to do that. And I was sad when I got to the time when Teddy actually had to leave New York because he went to the Spanish-American War. First went to Washington to become Assistant Secretary of the Navy, and then he was fighting the Spanish-American War. But I really missed him. Now he's governor, and pretty soon he's going to be vice president and then president.
Oh, my goodness.
I think he and Sarah are going to have to visit him in the White House.
Oh, that would be
great.
So one of the other characters that we really enjoy is Mrs. Ellsworth. And we were wondering, are the superstitions that she keeps putting out there, are they real, or do you make them up, and do you believe these superstitions?
Okay. That's a lot of questions.
It's really just one big question.
But everybody wants to know about Mrs. Ellsworth, and it is true. Every single one of those is a real superstition. I have like a collection of superstition books, and when I often regretted giving her that quirk because every book I have to come up with a superstition. You'd think it'd be pretty easy because, I have 3 or 4 books that are like really thick, full of superstitions, but about 99% of them are all things that happen on a farm.
Oh, well, that won't work.
She's too urban for that.
Most of these things would not ever happen in New York City. So it's like, okay. I just literally, when I get to that point in the book where I have to come up with a superstition, I have to stop for a day or two, flipping through all these books, trying to find a superstition that will work for her. And people have often said to me, why don't you just make one up? And what a great idea. I wish I could. I think it was because my mom was superstitious that I just do not believe in any of that stuff. And so my brain just will not come up with one. But you will notice, and I don't know, no one's ever pointed this out to me, but it's true. All of her superstitions, if it's like an omen,
yes,
it's going to happen, it happens.
Yes, it does.
Well, she is very enjoyable. We are glad that you gave her that quirk. Maeve has grown during the years in book installments. Do you see a separate line of books devoted to her and her story?
Well, you didn't ask me if she and Gina were going to get together, because that's the other question people
that was next.
I really did not plan this series to be this long. I never dreamed in a million years that I'd be fortunate enough to have a series that went on for over 20 books. So I didn't foresee Maeve even existing in the beginning. And when I first started writing, when I was writing my very first mystery, I contacted one of my friends, Jill Churchill, who had a very successful mystery.
I've read her books.
So I asked her what she wished she had known before she started writing the series. And one of the things she said was she wished she had realized that her youngest child, she had given her on 3 children, and the youngest one was like 8 years old. The other 2 were teenagers, so they were fine. But the 8-year-old always had to have a babysitter. She couldn't just leave him anywhere. So he's always going to play at a neighbor's house or stay with his grandparents or going somewhere because he was always had to be taken care of. So she said, just don't have any kids that need to be taken care of. So that was really good advice. So in the beginning, Frank has a son, but his mom takes care of him.
Yes.
So I was taken care of. So when I realized that Sarah was going to adopt this little girl, I thought she needs a live-in nanny. So, I plucked a girl out of the settlement house and just sent her over to live with Sarah, never dreaming that she would develop into anything important. So then, of course, she's took on a personality and a life of her own. And next thing I know, she's helping Sarah solve mysteries, which actually worked out really well. When I got to Murder on Bank Street, I realized Sarah could not investigate that murder because they would recognize her. They would know who she was. So that's how Maeve was sort of forced into duty because Sarah couldn't do it. And she was so good at it that she just sort of,
she loves it.
And she started, and I think she's going to start working part-time at the...
she's a natural.
She's going to, because Catherine's in school now all day, so she doesn't have anything to do.
That's true.
So she's going to have something to fill her time, I think. In one of the recent books, Frank observes that he's going to have to find her something to do.
Yes.
But, I can see, this isn't the first time somebody's asked me that, so I've certainly thought about it, Maeve and Gino, that if I think I would probably have to end the Gaslight series and then pick up a few years later with Maeve and Gino.
Oh,
if that ever happens. But right now, they're still very young.
Yes.
Get married. Well, they're young, and everybody says, well, they got married young in those days. Just or anything. So, yeah, love or romance, but I think I'll make you wait a little longer.
Just as an aside, why did you have Frank become a millionaire?
Well, that's an interesting story because, well, when I started out, it just seemed like a good idea to have something, that they wouldn't be able to get together.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of thought when the series started, they gave me a three-book contract. And I thought maybe if I'm really, really lucky, I'll get another 3-book contract and I'll have a 6-book series. And I was thinking, and maybe in the last book they'll get married. But then the series just kept going on. And I had so many obstacles in their way. And I don't know if people today can really understand. A lot of people will say, well, this is America. They could get married. And I'm like, yes, they could. It would be like if Ivanka Trump married the Muslim gardener.
Yes.
There's so many reasons why that could never happen.
Being an Irish cop.
So it was the Catholic thing, the Irish thing, the cop thing. He's poor. And even if she was willing, and she probably would have been willing to give up everything to marry him, he would never ask her to do that because it would mean she would never be welcomed in society again.
Right.
None of her parents' friends would receive her as the wife of an Irish policeman. And so all those doors would be closed to her. And it would also make the series kind of boring. But all these things going against me. But I started getting all these fan letters from people saying, they have to get together. It's been, all these years. It was only like 2 years for them. It was like 15 years.
Exactly.
I could understand. I was getting a little antsy too, but I could not for the life of me figure out a way to get them together. So I was actually in a master's program at the time, and one of my fellow students, I had mentioned that I was going to have a contest with my readers and asked my readers to come up with an idea of how they could get together. And thank heaven I didn't, because my readers didn't come up with any of the ideas and rejected. But one of the students, whose name was David Wilbanks, and he was a young guy, wrote science fiction, had never read anything I'd written, knew nothing about my series. And if there's a person on the planet who's complete opposite of me, it's David. He was at that time wearing his hair in a mohawk, like a foot tall, spray it different colors. And the picture he used for his online class, he was smoking a bong. So he was way out there compared to conservative me. So he sends me a private email. He says, I accept your challenge. I will come up with an idea for how they can get together. And he sent me a list of about 20 ideas.
Wow.
And so I was, of course, very skeptical. Thinking, how could he think of something when I couldn't think of something? So I'm reading down, no, that's stupid, no. And then I read one, I thought, wait a minute, that could work. And it wasn't exactly, he had suggested that Frank inherit money from a rich relative that he didn't know he had. But, he's Irish, so he never had a rich relative. So that wasn't going to work. But then I realized that could work. It didn't have to be his relative. And not only would it work, but it would work in the book I was writing at that very moment, because that was the Murder in Chelsea, where you will notice Catherine's father's name is David Wilbanks. I named him after the man who came up with that idea. And in America, the great equalizer, as Sarah's father points out, is money.
Yes.
And so it doesn't matter if he's Irish or Catholic. If he's got money, they will forgive him anything.
Yes.
I mean, the Vanderbilts are going to invite him over for tea, but he's going to go to tea with them anyway.
That's true.
The important thing was he could make a home for Sarah and provide for her and be respectable without being a cop anymore. And he's, just as rich as her parents now. So that was why it worked out that way. And thank heaven it did, because I had so many fans that were ready to lynch me.
Do you feel that female writers are taken more seriously now than in the past?
I wish I thought that was true. I think it's getting better. I mean, it's better than it was 100 years ago, certainly, and it's better than it was even when I started writing this series. I think we're talking about it more. But the organization Sisters in Crime was originally organized because they saw that women were not being nominated for the big prestigious awards. Women's books were not being reviewed in all the prestigious publications. They organized Sisters in Crime to address that. And they actually